Manhattan, 1980. A photography studio in the middle of a working day. The lights are up, the clothes are hanging. A full crew is waiting, and the man waiting with them is Richard Avedon, the most important portrait photographer in America. Vogue is paying for the day. Nobody keeps this room waiting. A window opens on the far side of the studio, and the model they are all waiting for climbs out of it and disappears into the city. She is 20 years old. She is the highest paid model on the planet. She can ask $10,000 for a single shoot. British Vogue, Paris Vogue, American Vogue, Versace, Armani, Dior, Yves Saint Laurent. Her agent had predicted she would soon be clearing $500,000 a year. Vogue does not drop her. Vogue books her again. 6 years from that afternoon, there will be a room in Philadelphia with almost nobody in it, and not one person from this industry standing in it. Not one photographer, not one editor, not one designer. Why they stayed away is the darkest part of this story, and it is not the reason you expect. There is no murder here. Nobody goes to prison. What happens to Gia Carangi takes 5 years, and every step of it is ordinary business. To understand it, we have to go back to a hoagie counter in Philadelphia. She was born in Philadelphia in January of 1960. Her father Joseph ran a sandwich shop. Hoagies, cheesesteaks, a counter, a register, 16-hour days. Her mother Kathleen was Irish-American. The house was loud in the way houses get loud when the marriage inside them is dying. When Gia was around 11, her mother walked out. Her mother left the family home, and Gia never came back from it. Every person who worked with her afterward, in New York, in Paris, in Milan, said the same thing in different words. She attached to people hard and fast. She needed someone to stay. Hold on to that. It is the entire mechanism of this story, and it is in place before she turns 12. She dropped out of high school, worked shifts behind her father's counter, and spent her nights in Philadelphia clubs. No portfolio, no training. She did not know modeling existed as a career. She had a face. In 1977, a local photographer put that face in front of a camera and sent the pictures to New York. They landed with Wilhelmina Cooper, a former model who had built one of the most powerful agencies in Manhattan. She looked at a 17-year-old with no book and no experience. She signed her on the spot. Because Gia Carangi did not look like 1977. The market wanted tall, blonde, blue-eyed, wholesome. Gia was dark, Italian-American, androgynous, and she stared into the lens like she was daring it to blink. She moved to New York in January of 1978. By October, she was in front of Chris von Wangenheim. He shot her behind a chain-link fence, fingers hooked through the wire. Those images ran in American Vogue and changed everything. By the end of her first year, Vogue was calling her rise meteoric. By the end of her second, she was the highest-paid model in the world. If this one is landing for you, hit the like button and subscribe to House of Ruin. It genuinely helps this channel find the people who care about these stories, because what she does over the next 18 months is one of the fastest climbs this industry has ever seen. And the woman who made it possible has less than a year to live. Now look at the height, because the fall means nothing until you feel it. Her aunt said later that Gia only ever wanted one thing from this business. One cover of Vogue. That was it. Just one. In April of 1979, she was on the cover of British Vogue and the cover of Paris Vogue in the same month, in 2 different countries. The magazines had not coordinated it. Neither knew the other was doing it. She was shooting with the men who defined the era. Scavullo, Avedon, Arthur Elgort, Helmut Newton, von Wangenheim. The absolute ceiling of the industry, asking for her by name. Newton shot her at a grand hotel in Paris for a layout called Woman into Man, still among the most recognizable images he ever made. And here is the detail that tells you how far it went. She did not audition. She chose. She decided which photographers she would work with and turned down the jobs she did not feel like doing. At 19, 2 years out of a sandwich shop. Then came the biggest one. August of 1980. The cover of American Vogue, shot by Avedon, and the editor-in-chief Grace Mirabella selected her personally. The girl who wanted 1 Vogue cover got 5. British, Paris twice, American, Italian, plus 5 covers of Cosmopolitan between 1979 and 1982, every one of them shot by Scavullo, who called her his muse. Campaigns for Versace, Armani, Christian Dior, Yves Saint Laurent, Diane von Furstenberg, Levi's, Maybelline, Vidal Sassoon. In 1980, she appeared in the video for Blondie's Atomic, jumping and dancing, and she was no longer only in magazines. She was on television. Now the money. A good working New York model in 1979 made a few $100s a day. Gia could ask $10,000 for 1 shoot. At 18, she was clearing more than $100,000 a year, well over $400,000 in today's money, and it made her the highest paid model alive. Wilhelmina thought that was the floor. In 1980, she predicted her girl would soon pass $500,000 a year. And then there is the thing money cannot measure. A few years later, a young model named Cindy Crawford arrived in New York, and the industry gave her a nickname. They called her Baby Gia. That is what it means to be first. She became the template the business used to describe everyone who came after her. The word supermodel was not in common use yet. It arrived later, attached to Linda and Naomi and Cindy, women who became global brands with lawyers and contracts and control of their own images. Gia is the door those women walked through. She never walked through it herself. Because everything holding her up rested on one woman, and by the time that American Vogue cover reached the newsstands, that woman had been dead for 5 months. Wilhelmina Cooper died on the 1st of March, 1980. Lung cancer. She was 40. She had been Gia's agent. She had also been the closest thing to a mother Gia had found since she was 11 years old in Philadelphia. The wall came down immediately. Gia had already been using cocaine first in the Manhattan clubs, at Studio 54, in rooms where everybody was on something. After Wilhelmina died, she moved to heroin. And the bookings kept coming. This is where people get the story wrong. She did not vanish quietly while a concerned industry looked on. The industry kept photographing her. It kept selling her. It kept taking its commission. Scavullo described a shoot in the Caribbean that year. She was crying because she could not find her drugs, and he had to lay her down until she fell asleep. Everybody got up the next morning and kept working. At a Richard Avedon session for Versace, she announced she was going out for cigarettes. She never came back. At another shoot, she fell asleep during a break and did not wake up even when the cigarette in her mouth burned down into her skin. And then there is the studio you saw at the start of this video. The Avedon session for Vogue. The open window. A full crew watching the most valuable model in the world walk out of a paid booking through a hole in the wall. Vogue rebooked her. The most respected photographer in America has just been abandoned mid-shoot by a 20-year-old, and the magazine schedules it again because the pictures are worth more than the problem, and that is only the walking out. The other thing was showing up in the pictures themselves. On her Vogue work that year, the marks were visible on her arms, so they airbrushed them. There were people in New York whose job, on those days, was to look at physical evidence that a 20-year-old was in serious trouble and remove it so the photograph could still run. The November 1980 issue went to press. By several accounts, even after the retouching, you could still see the marks in the printed magazine. They ran it anyway. And somebody had to give those pages a title. They called it The Start of Something Pretty. Then the industry stopped absorbing it, and it went fast. In November of 1980, she left Wilhelmina Models and signed with Ford, the biggest agency in the world. Ford dropped her in about 3 weeks. The most valuable face in fashion, finished at the top agency on earth in under a month, because Eileen Ford would not build a business around a girl who might not show up. Then her friends stopped speaking to her. Not strangers. People inside the industry who had worked beside her for years, including the makeup artist Sandy Linter, cut contact because being associated with her had become a career risk. Not a personal one, a professional one. In February of 1981, she went home to Philadelphia, moved in with her mother and stepfather, and completed a 21-day detox program. It did not hold for long. In March, she drove a car into a fence in a suburban neighborhood. There was a chase with police. She was taken into custody. By the autumn of 1981, she no longer looked like the woman on those covers, and she was still trying to come back. A senior agent named Monique Pillard hesitated to sign her at all. She got in at Elite, and this time, she got the treatment she had skipped the first time around. Nobody would book her. Desperate, she went to Scavullo, the one photographer who had never closed the door. And Scavullo did something that is either the kindest act in this story or the saddest. He gave her a Cosmopolitan cover. Look at how that photograph had to be built. Her arms could not be shown, so he posed her with her hands behind her back. The dress was full enough to hide the rest. She angled her face to hide the swelling. His longtime assistant later described what he saw through the lens. There was an emptiness in her eyes. April, 1982. It was her last cover. After that, America was finished with her. There was still work in Europe, where a growing German industry would pay 10,000 marks a week for a name New York would no longer touch. Catalog work. Mail order. Her final shoot was for a German mail-order clothing company, photographed in Tunisia in 1983. That is the end of the career. The highest-paid model in the world, 4 years earlier, finishing in a catalog. There is a piece of cruel timing here. A national television program about her, taped 9 months earlier during one of her comebacks, aired in January of 1983. By then, the industry treated it as a sad joke. The girl on screen was already gone. She left New York for the last time in early 1983 and moved back in with her mother in Philadelphia. She was 23. In 1986, Gia Carangi was diagnosed with AIDS. She had just turned 26. This was the middle of the 1980s, when the disease was barely understood and surrounded by fear. She was among a very small number of women in the world known to have it. And the fear reached into her own house. After the diagnosis, her stepfather refused to let her live there. She moved in with a friend until he relented. In August, the makeup artist Way Bandy became the next well-known figure in New York fashion to die of the same disease. She took it hard. The industry that had stopped calling her was now burying its own. That autumn, her brother's wife had a baby, and the family was uneasy about Gia visiting because of the illness. She went anyway. She spent her final months in Hahnemann University Hospital in Philadelphia, cared for by her family. Nobody from fashion visited. Not one designer, not one photographer, not one editor. Not one of them called. She died on the 18th of November, 1986. She was 26 years old. And now we are back in that room from the beginning of this video. A small church in northeast Philadelphia. About a dozen people. Family from the neighborhood, a few faces from the old street. Nobody from New York came. Part of it was fear. And in 1986, that fear was real. But fear does not explain Ford. Fear does not explain the airbrushing. Fear does not explain the friends who stopped returning her calls in 1981, 5 years before anyone was frightened of anything. They had stopped coming long before there was a disease to blame it on. The funeral was simply the last appointment they did not keep. She was buried in Pennsylvania, a few miles from her father's sandwich shop. Her photographs kept circulating. For years they turned up in retrospectives, in books, in features about the great fashion images of the era. The pictures were understood to be important. The chain-link fence, the covers, that face. And very often, the woman in them was not named. The image stayed valuable. The person had been cleanly separated from it. Meanwhile, the industry she opened the door for became almost unimaginably large. Within 10 years of her death, the top models on Earth were no longer employees. They were global brands signing contracts worth tens of millions, controlling their own images. The global fashion and modeling business today runs into many billions a year. Gia Carangi is the proof of concept for all of it. She showed that a single face could move a market. Her career lasted 5 years. She was dead at 26. And for years afterward, the business could not be bothered to print her name under her own photographs. She told her family she only ever wanted one cover of Vogue. She got 5, and then the industry that printed every one of them let her die in a hospital in Philadelphia without making a single phone call. There is no villain in this story, and that is the horror of it. Nobody decided to destroy Gia Carangi. There was a market. A market has no memory and no obligation. It will photograph you while the pictures sell, retouch you while the damage still hides, pose your hands behind your back when it does not, and stop calling on the exact day you cost more than you return. She was 11 when her mother walked out of a house in Philadelphia, and she spent the rest of her short life looking for somebody who would stay. She found an industry instead. It photographed her beautifully for 5 years. Then it did not come. If this is your kind of story, subscribe to House of Ruin. Like the video if it earned it. And tell me in the comments whose story you want opened up next, because every famous name has a chapter it would rather you never read. And we are working through them one at a time. Stay close. The next house we walk into buried something far worse than a reputation.